Good afternoon, everyone. Now, I'm from Miami, so when we say good afternoon, Miami, usually we expect a...
Good afternoon.
Thank you, thank you. So, welcome to this session, and I'd like to just start by introducing the panel. We have a lot to do today, so, and this is an experiment. We've actually never tried this with this larger group, but you're all going to be part of the experiment, so thank you in advance for that. So starting on my left, we have Tracey Robertson Carter. She's a trustee of the New World Symphony, as well also as the lead on South Florida Cares. And then we have Christina Salgado, who is the Director of Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion and Belonging at the Juilliard School. And then we have, sorry, I'm going too fast here. We have, Aleman-McAlipine, right? Thank you. Who is a program officer from the Wege Foundation. On my right is Portia Dunkley, who is the owner, I guess founder, right, of Violini. And then finally, Doty, who is the vice president and general manager of the Grand Rapids Symphony. So, what are we doing here today? Well, skipped over. So this is a device called How Might We? And How Might We is a creation of a question to define or focus a task. So the statement really is, how might we fill in the blank for fill in the blank, which is for the primary user, audience, constituent, so that, and then another blank for desired outcome. So to participate, and we all need you to participate in this, you have to be on Slido. Slido? I think Slido. Right. So how this works is that you go into Slido, you choose Venetian Ballroom. Okay, I'll pause there. That's number one. And then you want to go onto the polls side, not the Q&A side, but the polls side. So what will happen how this presentation is built is that as the panelists present their how might we's, you'll be prompted through this section of Slido to actually contribute to the conversation, to fill in the blanks. And when you are putting in your blanks, it's going to build a word cloud, and sort of the popular vote will be sort of the winner. So we'll pause at each point after each blank is filled in, choose what we're going to add to the overall statement, and then go from there. So you won't see this open right now until we start the first presentations. So with that, let's see, the next, oh, sorry, I'm having a slight technical, okay. So I'm going to open it up now, and it is how might we come up with an intended action. So I'm going to now turn it over to Aaron to give us the first how might we.
Great, thank you, John. And good afternoon, everyone. I think, how many of you have just come back from lunch and are starting to feel that sugar dip? Can we all stand up for a second? Can we stand up for a second, get some blood moving? All right, great. Yep, I'm the shortest one here. That's great, that's fine, all right. All right, sit back down, great, okay. So, in looking at these are not where our ending point is. These are simply suggestions. And so the how might we that I looked at with our organization at Grand Rapids Symphony is the actionable section, how might we increase diversity? And I want you to think about a time frame for when that action and verb should happen. Some verbs are more immediate than others. So in terms of sometimes things happen gradually, sometimes things happen immediately. A call to action has a different kind of connotation to it. So increasing diversity now is one of the things that we thought about using. But in terms of our, how might we talk about increasing diversity within our orchestra, within our staff, within our board, as we seek to further develop an environment that values a wider range of experiences. And so I will turn it over. I think Tracey's next on the list to talk about her action verb. But as we're doing this, you should be in Slido adding your own action verbs.
Right. And I think it's probably a good idea to try and keep it something a general as opposed to something specific to your organization, by the way. I should have added that. So that we have what come out of this, what we'd like to have is a statement and then have a discussion as to what action items we can move forward with to basically answer the question. So, Tracey, over to you.
And John, keep me on time. But I just
we're ahead of
thought-
schedule, so you can take
right.
extra time.
You should never tell me that. Okay, so my name is Tracey Robertson Carter. The reason I just want to take a minute before I get into what my how might we is how we got here. Outside of, thanks to the Sphinx organization and to New World and Teeny Violini, Grand Rapids Symphony, Weggy Foundation, and Juilliard being here with us, it actually started with 4 years ago. I went to a convening at New World, and I see some New World fellows in the room, and Chelsea walking in. At that convening, it was a convening around race. And shortly after that, I was invited to join the board. And I have friends who have been part of New World, whether as fellows or administrators, and I was very excited about the fact that I could tie in my social justice work and work that we do with CARE's mentoring movement around equity and inclusion, and tie that into something new where I could bring something to the table. Where we are today is that I attended Sphinx last year to learn more about this industry that you are all in, and I went to a discussion around race. It was brilliant. I don't know who was there last year for that. And it was the most, it was emotional, it was intense, and it was intentional around talking about why we're all here today and why I'm in the room and why I still feel I have a reason for being and being part of this board at New World, which at the end of the day, New World is an academy for young fellows to move on to leadership positions and to create that new world that we're all hoping to create together here in the work that you're doing at Sphinx. So on the stage here, there are two people that I wanted to show you a bit of the ecosystem that goes around making change. And one of them is the family foundation that I'm associated with. My husband's family foundation is the Weggy Foundation. And so for me to do the things I do, it's supported by Weggy Foundation, which is what M is part of. And one thing that I saw is at the League of Orchestras, or sometime last year, the Weggy Foundation gave $1 million grant to the Grand Rapids Symphony, which is at the end of the table, Aaron. And it was all around EDIB, equity, diversity, inclusion, and belonging. And what I learned from Grand Rapids Symphony is that as it does, it takes more than money. Money's good, but it takes taking a cultural change and having those courageous conversations, as my friend Christina shared with us last night, to move things forward. So I just wanted to give you just an idea of why I'm here, why I'm sitting on a panel, and why I will tell you that I still know that I have a reason for being, a lot more work to do around this work, and I hope you'll all keep in touch with me as well with your ideas. So my how might we is, how might we create a deeper culture of inclusivity and diversity to increase the number of fellows, staff, board, patrons, our online communities of color, so that we attract a more diverse community to New World, but also to the classical arts in general.
Thank you, Tracey. I forgot to tell everybody that if you're on Slido, you have to actually, when you log in, you have to choose hashtag SphinxConnect. That'll bring you to here, and then, choose Venetian Ballroom, and then choose polls from there. So we actually have a few inputs, and so we're going to actually move to Slido and take a look at what the word cloud looks like. It's growing. Ask the panel's help to try and create from that. So it's picking words from all your statements, and the ones that are recurring the most are coming up. We see start, we see family, staff, people, make, create, equity, disrupt. Okay, let's halt right there, and let's see if we can, anybody from the audience can also suggest a statement that takes into account those the larger boxes with words in them.
John, can I call people out since I have a microphone?
Sure.
So,
Go ahead. No, absolutely.
I see some friends in the room. Charisse, you know I'm coming to you. Do you have anything just from your background with the work you do, as well as being a professional bassoonist, anything that comes out for you in this word cloud that you see? Or Sheldon, or Ingrid, anyone in that row that I know, or Jasmine? Say perfection is the enemy of achieving a start.
Right.
Well said. I know a number of people in the audience. You don't want me to call you out?
So
Okay.
I think that the largest word right there is create. So I think we can just build this from create. Okay, create what? Create, is it space? Create communities? Obviously, you're not going to create people, but well, maybe we will. I don't know. Create culture. A culture of empowerment. Go, Christina.
Possibly create a culture of change.
Great culture of
simply.
change
I don't know if this is on.
is. Anybody want to add to that here? Create culture of change. Disrupt. Disrupt came up quite a bit. Disrupt the current
Or-
culture.
Or create a disruptive culture.
Nope, sorry. Over there, say, yeah. Okay. So if we had to, if we said disrupt the current, would we say systems or systems and institutions potentially? We see a lot of head nodding. So disrupt current systems and institutions. And create a culture of change. Okay. So we're going to go with disrupt systems and institutions to create a culture of change. But I think that actually might be in the last blank, actually. You might actually have done that. So, but let's just record that right now, and let's go on. I'm going to close that out. We're going to go back to the PowerPoint. I'm opening up for who, basically, section. And, oops, sorry, moving ahead. I'm going to hand this over to Portia while you think about the intended audience, the user, or the beneficiary of this. So, next slide, please. Portia, that's all yours.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Portia Dunkley, and just want to give you some context for my How Might We. I recently received an opportunity, a grant for a new project to start a program that would highlight the voices of African American composers in my community using musicians of color. And so this How Might We really stuck out to me. It says, how might we as arts administrators of color leverage relationships, partnerships in South Florida for Black composers and musicians to build a community of financial and in-kind support that promotes works and provides playing opportunities in South Florida. And when I applied for the grant, I applied for it as an individual, so it wasn't attached to an organization with a budget or with connections or anything like that. And so as an entrepreneur, I'm thinking, okay, well, I have a very small network, and how do I use that network in order to build this project that I essentially really don't have the support yet for it? And so that was my, that's why I came here. And I think for a lot of us who are individuals and really want to do something big or have these big, grand ideas, we don't necessarily know where to go or know where to start. But identifying your immediate circle or the relationships and being able to leverage that so that you can make that first next step, that's the idea of this.
Thank you, Portia. Okay, let's go to Slido and see how that word cloud is doing. The anticipation is, ooh, who's this going to be for? Yay. Boy, administrators seem to be getting a lot of attention. Yikes. Here we go. Community. Okay, let's see what we can, but community, so what would we put with community? So, that's right, exactly. This is for disenfranchised. We have African diaspora, youth musicians, administrators gone down in size.
It's interesting that community keeps coming up because that was one of the first ideas that I came up with was building a community around the idea to support first, the culture, the program.
So John, if we're making
Yes.
a statement, right, so we use disrupt institution and create a culture of change for
Right.
communities of disenfranchised, community of, I'm just looking there just to
Yeah.
keep repeating because you're all participating in this and we're creating this statement together.
Right.
So when you look at community in regards to this statement, does anything else come up for anyone here around what audience looks like that we're trying to address? All right, I love a mic.
Yeah.
So I actually have a new friend, Gerard. There you are. So when you're looking at this, you're out of the Bard School. So what we're doing is putting together this statement. So when you're looking here and you're seeing community come up, what does that mean with who are we trying to impact So we're saying is we're disrupting institutions to create a culture of change for whom we see community, but what does that mean to you?
So would it be maybe the disenfranchised community?
Yeah. Anyone that's not being listened to, I think, falls into that category.
Okay.
In the arts.
Helpful. Disenfranchised community, does that sound good to everybody? Yes? No? Yeah, go.
First off, we need to get disenfranchised, but just in general, I think of it more as communities who are not engaged with them. Like, they are disengaged. They may not necessarily be disenfranchised by the institution, but we know for example.
Okay, that sounds actually really good. So, yep, sorry, go.
In that same vein, I also think of who is the community, like what concepts they know about what are we bringing to them. And, some people might be accepting or not. It's also understanding where that community comes from and bridging that gap between our community and their community. Because, for instance, I think my personal example, we call it workers and people work 9 to 5 or 2 jobs. How could we do that and apply what are we trying to do in a nice little package to them? But also, in an even bigger extent, I think to myself, how do we do it in the best honorable and
Right.
the most, not making it seem
Right.
that we're catering to them, but we're sharing to them something that
Right, that would be a perfect segue to the next part of this presentation, in fact, so please hold that thought, it's great. But I think disengaged communities is the second blank. All right, so I'm going to open up, if this thing behaves, I'm going to close that one. I'm going to open up the third blank, and we are now going back to the PowerPoint. Thank you, everyone, by the way. There we go. So that's the last one, is what's the desired outcome. This is kind of the tough one, I think, in some respects. Next slide, please. Okay, Emily, you are on. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everybody. And I'm actually going to share my microphone with you all. So I'm going to hand this to someone. And as people speak, if you could use the microphone so everybody can hear you in the room. So good afternoon, everybody. My statement was, how might we create equity and access for artists of color so the arts are diverse and inclusive of all people and all culture? So my statement was this, because where I come from, we live in an incredibly diverse city. It is incredibly diverse and incredibly segregated. So just about everywhere there is an organization, parallel to that organization, there's another organization that specifically is created to address the gaps that are not being addressed. For example, there is a Grand Rapids Chamber, and then there's a Hispanic Grand Rapids Chamber. There is the Arts Museum, and then there's the Granville Avenue Academy for the Arts, because the Latino kids are not getting a lot of art if it weren't for this Arts Academy in the corridor where it's predominantly Latinos. So I could go down the list of all the organizations where there's pretty much a parallel organization. But when we see this at the foundation, and at the foundation, as Tracey said, we support the arts and culture, but we don't just do it for art's sake. We do it to create equity. We do it to create inclusion. That is wonderful, and we believe in supporting the arts. But beyond that, how can we use the arts to create that platform for everyone? And for us, that's important. And part of it, we have cross-cutting themes. Somebody told me the other day, it's like your values. So diversity, equity, inclusion, yes, very much our value. So one of them, we have 4 of them, but that's one of them. And that's, for us, one of the basics that we need to see in any proposal, regardless of what that proposal is for. And so in Grand Rapids, we're also known for being Grand Rapids nice. I don't know if that's a term that was coined there or what, but people are very polite. They talk about diversity, equity, and inclusion in a way that's lovely and beautiful. But then when we get to the actionable items and what steps are really happening, then that's where the rubber hits the road. And where, for lack of better terms, I'm sorry for that. But for us, we really want to look at, okay, so that sounds great, but then what and how? How are you going to do it? Because we could talk, and I have been in so many conversations around DI, DIMB, name the acronym. I've been in 1,000 conversations around it, but how has it helped to make things different in our community or any community? So as a program officer, we really start to peel back the onion around what does that look like? And that includes in the arts. So when we talk about inclusion, really, what does it look like from the top down? What does the board look like? What do the influencers and decision makers who may not be a part of that formal organization, but they're there. If you go to a Latino community or an African American community, those pastors are influencers and decision makers. How have they been included in this process? Have you even reached out to them? You know, what do your volunteers look like? What does your staff look like? Executive leadership on down. Sorry.
No, it's okay. Sorry, I'm only going to have to interrupt you.
You can go on, but
This is an unenviable task,
so that's how I
Yep.
created my statement, and that's how we work in the foundation to ensure that it's really happening.
Thank you so much. Christina, over to you. Next slide, please. There we go. Yep.
All right. So I just really want to start off by saying what seems really critical to me is really having a clear vision. And I really have to give a shout out to our president, Damian Wetzel, who really from day one said that EDIB is a primary priority for him and for the institution at large. And he really wanted this to be a core value that was interwoven into everything that we do at the institution. My time at the institution, I've been there for a little over a year, and I'm so pleased to be part of a session that's being run this way, that we're really engaging with the community in front of us, because I think that's really valuable. With that being said, I'll jump into my how might we statement or question, and how might we build support systems for students, faculty, and staff that not only fosters deeper dialogues on EDIB within our community, but allows us to actively broaden programming and change policy when needed to ensure we uphold our EDIB values. I think what's so interesting, in how we built this statement was really thinking about, we've been in a lot of dialogues. We've been discussing EDI, EDIB, DEI, whatever you want to call it. And really, we need to start thinking about what are those action steps that we can really put forward. And there's, of course, things that we can simply change and do, but there's other things that really require buy-in from your community. And when you're working at an institution like Juilliard, where you have multiple constituents who are engaging with your community in very different ways, that's really critical to think about. And so I wanted to make sure in this statement that we were looking at what do the students need? What does the faculty need? And then what does our staff need? We really embarked on a listening tour with the help of some consultants to hear from our community initially. So we didn't really say anything, we just said, tell us your thoughts. And we sat there and we listened, and we gathered all of that information. And what was really interesting to me was that there were things that really bubbled to the surface that were kind of across the board and categories of things that were really necessary. And being in an environment where the dialogue was embraced and people had the tools to have that dialogue was really critical. Now, the students were saying, hey, we're having this discussion, we're excited about it, and we want to engage with our teachers on this. The faculty was saying, well, we need the tools to be able to engage. We know it's important, but we're not sure where to start. And then the staff was saying, well, we're sometimes just behind our desk, and we need to be more involved so we can understand how this whole ecosystem is continuing to evolve. And so I just think that's something that's really, really valuable to my last thought on all of this. beyond the conversation and being in a place where we can really have these courageous dialogues and challenge one another and hear different perspectives and really give space to those who have typically not been in the conversation. I think that's really, really critical. We're using our privilege to allow and to support someone who maybe hasn't been at the table. I think one thing that's critical to think about are unintended consequences, especially when we're thinking about policy making. So what are the things that have had these consequences that maybe they were unintended, but that are really detrimental as we're trying to move forward any initiative that we put forward. So that's the last thing I'll leave you all with.
Christina, thank you so much. Okay, let's take a look at the word cloud. Drum roll. Cultural competency. So that we
John, I like the noun of a bridge. That was where we left off from the last segment.
Okay.
I used the word bridge. I love that, and in terms of a bridge towards cultural competency and educational inclusion,
Right.
looks like two of the strong themes.
right, or just looking at some of the other words, is it so that cultural competency is a reality, for example, as opposed to a bridge? I mean, nothing against bridges, but I think we've been building bridges for a long time. Yeah. We can get people across those bridges. Oh. There we go. Sorry.
Thank you.
Oh, it was actually for me. Awesome, cool. Can you hear me? Crazy. So when I think about inclusion and cultural competency, I would like to go like one step deeper into what does that mean for these groups. If they are included, it means that they benefit from the services that we provide, from the mission that we serve, when they didn't previously. So, like the words that I added were mutual benefit. They benefit from the organization at this point, or from the mission that we serve now. And they also, we've created a shared value in what it is that we do and who we do it for.
Anybody else?
I was going to say with cultural competency, this is, for me personally, this is stepping into repertoire actually and to how orchestras work. To me, cultural competency, and this is really hitting the nail in it, is not playing Beethoven 25% of the time. Mm-hmm. And I know that's a hard statement to say, but to me, I look at America and I look at cultural competency. Not everyone. There needs to be more competency towards what is our audience, who is our people. And I understand there are certain artists that we need to respect and we need to play, which is fine. But when we only see certain people, certain demographics in that orchestra, is that true cultural competency? Because to me, cultural competency is reflecting the community, is reflecting what is our culture. Where are we in, as people say in America, what crossroads are we in?
So I'm going to take a stab at this from what you were saying, so that the culture is equitable.
Yes.
Sir. Can you project?
One thing I've noticed, we've got a lot of great musicians in the room, and most of our programs are designed for the performance end. But one thing that we often miss is the advocacy piece and the policy design piece. Instead of only pushing, if we're going to go the academic route, the DMA, what about the PhD? That's going to start changing the dynamic on what's happening in our curriculums and all that kind of stuff. And when you look at the statistics, when it comes to advocacy work and the research, we're mostly focusing on the performance, but are we trying to promote the academics to actually match, the ESSA and all of these policies that's coming out? So how do we do that as institutions?
Because educational inclusion is quite large on that board. And it could be a a double thing in this last part of the statement. Yep, want to try a stab at this?
I have a question about cultural competency. I work at a classical music radio station in Portland, Oregon, and I'm currently the only person of color on staff and have been for the last 8 years. Never worked with another person of color, so a little sad, but happy to be here. And my question is, how do you create cultural competency if you feel like you're the only one on board with the change, or maybe you have an ally or two, but everyone else is kind of giving you eye rolls? So how do you create an organizational-wide cultural competency, like given those limiting factors, or can you?
Yeah. So I think that's also a good segue to the next part of the discussion, but we got to get this last blank filled. So, this was going to be the tough one, I know. So that I like that. So that cultural competency is, sorry, say that again.
So that cultural competency is not the standard of excellence, but the standard.
Is not a standard of excellence, but the standard of excellence?
The standard.
Just the standard, period. The standard. I like that. Anybody else? Should we try that?
And if I may, cultural competency and equity. So those two pieces coupled together.
Yep.
Just tapping back into, I think, some comments that were made over here is maybe there's room to consider cultural competency that fostered a shared value of all community members, so that there's this idea that everyone is valued and that is shared amongst the community.
It's way too quiet.
Yeah,
So the reason that I'm saying that is that there are folks in the room, all of you, as well as I know we have representatives from the different symphonies. We have, with you and with us together, this circle of influence. So I'm going to ask, again, I told you I love a mic, and I see a lot of the Sphinx leads who were at my home a year ago drinking wine and eating food. So I'm going to call out Chelsea. I might ask you to maybe, would you mind what you think the desired outcome from some of the words that you see there? Chelsea's over there. Sorry, Chelsea. Oh, no, and there's a question in the front. Oh, well, this one, the desired outcome, because I think we're trying to pull together, but we may not have the exact answer, but I just feel we have such a circle of influence here. I'd love to hear more voices. So I thought, Chelsea, what do you think from the words that you're seeing, or anyone? Chelsea's back there, one of our fellows. Thanks.
Right. Oh, hi. So I'm coming from this, from a musician's standpoint. I'm a violinist in New World Symphony. And when I see these words, what comes to mind is, as far as a desired outcome, is creating an environment where I feel safe as a person of color, as a woman of color, in a room where I haven't always felt that way. Safe to express myself in leadership positions as well, not just on the stage, but off the stage, and really give my ideas in a way that doesn't kind of pigeonhole me. So when I think of cultural competency, that's kind of what comes to mind, yeah.
One thought came to mind is that that I have to be competent in the mainstream dominant culture's way of talking and music and practices, and yet that's not reciprocal. So I think cultural competency, that's what I think about in terms of being valued the same and honored in the same way and seeing the same quality level.
So just going back to also what you said, and maybe so, and talking about putting equity in there as well, so that equity and cultural competency are the standards. Can we just try that and just see what the whole statement looks like? 10 minutes late. We have 10 minutes left? Yeah. So if we could put that back to the PowerPoints and add that last statement in there. Okay, they're getting there. We'll see what our work has. Yeah, it's 10 after 3. Derek, go. What? Sure, go.
How might we disrupt current systems and institutions to create a culture of change for communities that have not been typically engaged in the art form so that cultural competency and equity are the standards?
So this is a statement that we're not going to probably be able to, or a question we're not going to be able to answer right here in the next now 9 minutes. But there's something, one of the reasons we wanted to do this session and with Sphinx is that to give something to think about as you go through the rest of the conference. And you know, one of the things that's helpful is to try and have like a lens through which to look through. And if you like this statement, that may be something you may want to adopt. But in the meantime, we do have a few minutes, so I'd be interested going back, hearing more comments, thoughts.
I'm sorry,
Ideas
did you
of
have
how
a
we do
comment
this?
by chance? One of the leads from last year with me? No? I know you do. I know you do.
Hello, everyone. My name is Elizabeth Steiner. I'm one of the Sphinx leaders and a harpist based in Philadelphia. I was struck by your question at the Portland radio station, and I think you should just program the music you want to have played and do it anyway, because I feel like you never know who's listening to your program. And I'm speaking as the daughter of 2 people that were radio DJs. So, you know, their programming, it makes a difference. You never know what might resonate with someone, or when you go and perform a piece on a program that's a transcription, but it's by a composer of color, and you never know how it will be received, but you have to do it anyway, and by doing that, you kind of gain a new sense of pushing the field forward. So that would be my only, and I was struck by the word effort as well, because it's always going to take effort to make a hard decision that will actually make a change. And especially in a space where you're the only, you have to be the person leading it forward. So.
Thank you. Other thoughts? Haven't heard a lot from this side of the room.
I'll say something.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
So I think I definitely came in this late, so I'm not really up on all this. So please forgive me if my comments don't necessarily make sense. But maybe in this question, I assume it's a question, but it has a period at the end. All right. And we're.
Oh.
I'm sorry. I just. Yeah, right. No. We're fine. We're fine.
You are so right.
I was just confused. I'm sorry. And we're supposed to be giving like our personal things. Okay, so maybe just from how this was phrased, disengaged communities, I guess, is the people that we're trying to sort of look to and I guess put on the forefront. Instead of us trying to do those things to help them, maybe we can go inside those communities and figure out what is already being done, and then put those in front of the institutions that have been trying to claim the status quo or claim like the high art forms, and say, like put them in those spaces, or delegitimize those spaces and legitimize these disenfranchised communities that have already been doing this work and have continued to do all of this stuff all the time. We just turn a blind eye to it because they don't work for money. They don't do all this stuff for, fame. They do it for their friends. They do it for their families. So if we can find those communities and learn something, I think that is where we move forward so that we can spark a revolution inside of white supremacy and all this crap that we live in today. So I think that's the real goal, is revolution, and it starts in those disengaged communities. I've been fighting it from day one.
Yeah. So can I suggest a change then? Can we change for to with? So we're not providing something for, but we're doing an action that's collective with those communities.
Does that sound good for everybody? Excellent. Thank you, Aaron.
You want me to go? Okay. Hi. Hi, everyone. My name is Janelle Robinson, and I wanted to disagree with your advice that you gave to our friend in Portland, because what's not being said is, well, there's a lot being said, first of all, but what's not being said is that people of color, especially if you're the one of a few or the only one, you're sacrificing every day going into whatever space you're in, and to put the pressure and responsibility of changing the culture on the person that is most marginalized and affected by it is, I don't think, the best way to do it. Because I'm happy that you mentioned about removing the word bridge, because that implies being walked on, and a lot of times the person of color is the one that's getting stepped on in order to get to the other side of post-racial whatever. But I would encourage you to find a support system, maybe outside of where you are, somebody that you can call and, girl, let me tell you what happened today. You know, something like that, because you need to be built up. And then you have to, what I call, count your chips. You have to assess the situation. I can go in there, I can kick the door open and really let them have it. Or I can even do it nice. But what is this going to cost me down the line? Because I may forget what I said in the heat of passion in this board meeting. And then 3 months from now, when I need my budget approved, I don't have an ally, So I think being thoughtful about what are you willing to sacrifice, because it's going to cost you something. And having someone to be there to support you. So, if you have to leave and get a job at Target or whatever you got to do, you know what I'm saying? You know what the cost is, because we never want to just, go into something and not know exactly what it's going to cost us. That's it.
Thank you. We have somebody over here had a, yes. Let's get you a microphone. Sorry. It's on its way. Reminds me like, marathon, relay races here. Hand the mic off.
Thank you. Hello. Oh, that's loud. I'm Sha. I'm from the New Haven Symphony Orchestra. And to answer this question, to kind of piggyback off of what she just said, you have to analyze the situation and know what you're going into, knowing what you have to sacrifice. Any type of disruption, you have to give up something, but you also have to be fearless. I feel like we have to think of how can we get them to be on our side, or how can we maneuver? And I think we waste a lot of time thinking of the best plan and never get to the plan. So I think it's kind of to walk on faith and to put your best foot forward. Like change, they always say change is slow. But if something needs to be done in an establishment wants it done, it could be done tomorrow. But when we're talking about disrupting systems and moving towards equity and inclusion, it's much of a longer race. I don't necessarily think that's always true. So I think to really disrupt, we have to just bust the move. Like, do it. We always have a plan. Always know what room you're going into and who you're speaking to, but not to continue to waste time on how are we going to do this, who are we going to call, okay, are they feeling good today? Like, are they on our side? It doesn't matter. If it's going down, it's going down. Let's make it happen, and let's move accordingly.
Thank you. Well, we have 1 minute left.
Oh, can I?
Go.
So my name is Stephen Palacio. Hi, everybody. Hi, Christina. Good to see you again. I think one of the things that I want to piggyback off of what you said and the woman in the back over there about allyship, that's a really important thing to consider, especially we can find ourselves in situations where we are the change maker. We are the ones that have the ability to affect change directly. If you have the luxury of being in an executive director position or even like a VP position, that's a fantastic thing. If you don't have that opportunity, it's really important to make sure that the relationships that you are building in your workspace, whether that be playing an instrument or being on administration, to remember that it's always the relationship first and that the allyship component will get you to where you want to go. So I encourage everybody to increase they're thinking about your emotional intelligence and how you're going into these situations, because that'll help the overarching goal, which is to have more of this equity and inclusion and all of that, but through relationship building.
Thank you so much. And thank you, everybody, for participating in this experiment. Have a good rest of the conference. Thank you.